3 truths behind breakups that you need to know. So let's face it, guys, relationships can be tough. And to be honest, all relationships have their ups and downs. Even my relationship, me and my wife sometimes, hey, things are great. We're on the same page and everything's clicking. We're kind of clicking like the Golden State Warriors back in 2017 when they had Kevin Durant and Steph Curry, right? It's almost like we can read each other's minds. And then there's some times where we're just not on the same page. Sometimes we get frustrated with each other, annoyed with each other, right? And sometimes, we're just not, in the best of places with one another. But like most couples, you're able to figure things out. You're able to move forward in a relationship. And a lot of times, those ups and downs, it's really the down parts of that relationship that actually helps the relationship overall. Because what I always tell my clients is that confrontation or even disagreements, they lead to clarity. And that clarity can be very valuable in getting a great understanding where both sides stand on a certain issue. But here's the thing, not all relationships are able to come back together. Sometimes relationships, they end. And what I want to talk about in this podcast episode is 3 truths behind every breakup that you need to know, so that way you know how to recover. And also you can be able to process your breakup, because let's face it, we've all been broken up with, right? Whether it's formally, informally, whatever the case it may be, we've all had relationships that did not end the way that we wanted it to end. So we've all experienced that pain. And if you're going through that pain right now, this podcast will help you to process a lot of that pain. So before I go into point number 1, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you get more information like this. All right, with that being said, let's get into point number 1. So the first truth behind every breakup that I love to talk about actually comes from a story that I love sharing, if you will. And this story comes from basketball, believe it or not. And if you're a loyal podcast listener, you know that I love sports, and basketball is kind of like another language that I use to communicate to my audience. So with that being said, in sports, one of the things that I absolutely hate is when someone says at the end of the game, hey, that pass cost us the game, or that bad call from that ref cost us the game. And the reason why I hate that is because there was a whole entire game, right? A whole 47 minutes and 30 seconds that were played before this one turnover that happened, this one call that happened, or this one missed shot. But somehow, some way, people have come up with the conclusion rather, that this one play caused this game to end. And that's a complete disgrace to the past 47 minutes that you've been playing in that game. And you hear a lot of great coaches say in their press conferences when they go through a bad loss, hey, we had 47 minutes to throw this game away, right? We had 47 minutes to lock this game up and to win it, but we didn't. So it wasn't just this one play. And it's the same thing with relationships. So what I mean by this, and this is the first truth when it comes to relationships and when they break up, is that it's never just one thing. A lot of times we think that it's the dishes, or it's when someone didn't respond back to a text, or it was an argument, whatever the case it may be. I will even say this, even when someone cheats on someone, right? When someone's not loyal, it's never just one thing. It's an accumulation of things that led up to that breakup. And I say this because next time you're in a relationship, I want you to be able to mitigate a lot of these little things that we kind of sweep under the rug. Believe it or not, one of the sayings that our couples therapist, so me and my wife, we've been in couples therapy. One of the sayings that our couples therapist said was that if you keep sweeping things under the rug, eventually you're going to trip over that rug. And that's what a lot of people end up doing. They end up tripping over that rug because they're just sweeping things under it. And then one day, something small, like not doing the dishes, sends that other person off the cliff. And they start to yelling and arguing. They start bringing up everything from the past that has been swept under that rug. And now you're in this big argument and you don't know how you got here. That's the biggest thing that actually happens in a lot of relationships. And it's the downfall of a lot of relationships. So what I want to do is I want to help give you grace, because if there was one thing that you felt pushed things over the edge, I wanted to let you know that it wasn't just one thing. And it wasn't just one thing that you did. It wasn't just one thing that they did, but it was an accumulation of things that were done on both sides that led to this breakup. So if you're kicking yourself because there's something that you forgot, a mistake that you made, something that you said, something that you did, I want you to know that it wasn't just that one thing. And I want you to be able to go easy on yourself, because trust me when I say, in your next relationship, it's going to help you to be on the forefront of watching out for these little things that you've been sweeping under the rug. You're actually going to start to address them now, because now you know the little things, they're really big things when they start to accumulate. All right, truth number 2 behind breakups. And I promise you're not going to like me for this one, but I got to tell you the truth, right? That's why you're here. You're not here for anything that's sugar-coated. So truth number 2 to breakups is that you played a part in the breakup. I don't know how your breakup ended, what happened, but trust me when I say you played a part in that breakup. And I'll even say this from the side of the person that didn't do anything wrong, right? That didn't do the wrong thing. how you played a part in that breakup is that maybe you didn't set expectations. Maybe you didn't set boundaries. Maybe you wasn't clear on what it is that you want this relationship to look like. These are all things that play into your part when a relationship doesn't go well. And even with my previous point, as I said, there's accumulation of things that tend to happen in relationships that leads to the breakup. And that accumulation of things is not just all the things that they did, but it's some of the things that you did on your end. And I'll even add this as well, because I've seen this in a lot of relationships. And I don't want to pick just one side, like the guys or the girls, but I do tend to see this with a lot of the women. But when the guy messes up, a lot of women would hold that thing against them and they would never let it go. They would never let the person forget that they made this one mistake. So let's say it is something like someone being, let's say, not faithful, right? So someone cheated. What I tend to see is that women, or just anybody in relationships with men as well, but I tend to see this with women where they would hold this against them. Even though they're still in the relationship with them, they will still hold it against them. And this is where forgiveness has to be the thing that you have to do on your end. And if your relationship has ended because someone did something wrong, I would tell you, even if someone cheats, that person still is able to build that relationship back together. That relationship can still live. Someone cheating, someone not being faithful, but it takes both sides, okay? It takes both sides to make that commitment. The commitment from the person that did the cheating, they have to make the commitment that they're going to be faithful and they're going to be loyal. Here's another thing. People don't just cheat for no reason. A lot of times there's something underneath that led them to cheat, and that is what needs to be addressed. So that is the issue that the person that cheated needs to address. The person that was cheated on, what they need to address, and this is a tough one, but you need to address in your heart, are you truly, truly ready to forgive? I'm not asking you to forget, but what I'm asking is for you to forgive. There's a great Bible verse. It's somewhere in Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, I think it's chapter 13, verse 5. Don't hold me to it. But at the end of that verse, it says that love holds no record of wrongs. And I like that. I like it because when you approach your relationships, there's going to be times where they're not perfect. There's times where you're not perfect. But to hold that against someone is a travesty, and that will be the death. It's kind of like that weed that's growing in your garden. And by not cutting that weed out, it's going to suffocate every rose that you have in that garden. It's going to suffocate every ounce of love that you have in your relationship. So you have to be able to let that go. And if you don't, that's where resentment is built. And that resentment, if you know anything about the 7 horsemen of Gottman's training, which is a whole therapy thing, one of the 7 horsemen that actually explains or illustrates the doom of a relationship is the horseman of resentment. It's when you hold something against somebody, you don't let it go. It's where you start to withdraw from the relationship. That's one of the 7 pillars, or as they say, one of the 7 horsemen that actually leads to the death of relationships, right? Truth number 2, somehow, some way, whether you didn't forgive, didn't explain your boundaries, you didn't explain your expectations, or maybe you actually did do something wrong, right? Something outwardly wrong. Whatever it is, you played a part in it. And the reason why this is so important, I'll give you this last tip, is because when you actually acknowledge that you did something wrong, it gives you the ability, it gives you the power rather, to actually go and address these issues, because now you're taking ownership of that relationship. When you don't take ownership of problems, when you don't take ownership of things in your life that has happened, it leaves you in this place of feeling helpless, hopeless. And when you feel that, that's where the depression starts to build up. That's where you start to question, am I really confident? Am I really able to get back into a new relationship? But if you're able to look and see and be honest about where you went wrong, it'll allow you to actually address those issues so that when you get into your new relationship, you feel more empowered. You feel like you can be the author of this relationship and actually dictate how you want this relationship to go. Truth number 3, the last truth. And if you made it this far, it tells me that you like this podcast. And if you like it, you should definitely subscribe to it, because it means that you're willing to take action. And I'm always big with all the action takers in life, but especially in this podcast. So go ahead, that subscribe button so that you can join the club. So truth number 3, the last truth of breakups that you need to know today is that they're tough, even for the person that decided to call it quits. It's like, what? Yes, that is something that is like one of the biggest myths about breakups. A lot of people believe that it's only the person who got broken up with that is going through the heartache. But the person that had the courage to say that they can't do this anymore, a lot of times it takes a tougher toll on them, because they also know that they broke someone else's heart in this process. The relationship that they wanted to have, the relationship that they thought was going to last forever, is gone. And that's a tough thing that they have to deal with. But the second thing that they have to deal with that the other person doesn't is the fact that they hurt someone else in that process. Now, it wasn't malicious, but still, Someone had to be hurt. And here's the thing, guys. If you're the person that has done the breaking up, if you're someone that's thinking about breaking up with someone, here's the thing, guys. I can't have you sacrifice your happiness for someone else, because the moment you do that, the relationship will end. And here's the thing. On the surface, it may not end, but internally, it will end. And what I mean by it will end internally is that you guys may still be together, you may be married, maybe in a long committed relationship, may even have kids. But the love, the genuine love that you have for the other person will end. And what you just have is just two empty souls just living together out of convenience, out of fear of not being hurt, or out of fear of not hurting the other person. And that, my friend, is a travesty to you, because you deserve better. So again, this is the biggest myth. What's actually funny about this is that there's a saying that parents have, and my parents didn't say this because they really meant it, but there's a saying that parents had whenever they spanked their kids, and the saying was, it's gonna hurt you more than it's gonna hurt me. And to this day, I don't really believe it, but I will say my parents, they never said that, because they believe like, hey, it's going to hurt you and you deserve to be hurt. You need to be hurt because probably I did something wrong, if you will. But that's a take that a lot of people have when it comes to breaking up with other people. Like, I know it's going to hurt you, but it's going to hurt me even more. And that's the biggest myth that people have. Now, here's something I want to tell you, something I want to ask you. I want to ask you this question. Is it okay for you to feel this hurt as you're going through this process being the breaking up process? That is a big question. And the way you answer that question will determine how the next 6 months of your life will go. Because if you could say, yes, it's okay for me to feel this hurt, you won't do anything to avoid that pain. And what happens when people try to avoid pain is actually they add more pain to their current pain. And what this leads to is a word called suffering. So suffering is something that's long lasting, it's unimaginable, and it's more harsh than pain. Pain is something that we all go through, but suffering is something that's optional. I give you a great example of how someone goes into suffering when they're going through the pain of a breakup. So if someone has been broken up and they're feeling really, really down, one way they may try to escape that pain is by drinking, smoking, using drugs, or even having sex with random people. And when they do that, they now develop addictions, or maybe they catch an STD. There's so many different things, or maybe they break someone else's heart in that process, or maybe they don't take the time to learn why their relationship ended in the first place. And now they get into a new relationship with the same exact problems. So this is how someone goes from pain to suffering, and you do not have to do that. But if you cannot say yes to that question, is it okay for me to feel this hurt while I go through this process? You will go through suffering. Now, what I really need you guys to understand, guys, is that, again, breakups happen to everybody. Before I met my wife, hey, I had some relationships that didn't go well, right? And there's a good chance you did too. But as someone who has gone through breakups, I can say that there is someone out there for you. And when you find that person, you will forget all the women that you had before. You will forget all the men that you had before. And that, my friend, is worthy. That, my friend, is worth it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to review these 3 truths that you need to learn today in order to help you to overcome and to get through these breakups. So truth number 1, as I stated, is that it's just never one thing. I want you guys to think about sports when I talk about this. It's never just the last turnover of the game, shot of the game, or bad call of the game by the refs that ends the game. It's the first 47 minutes that determines whether or not that game will win or that game you will lose. The second point that I made is that you played a part in the breakup. And I know that can be tough to believe sometimes, but we all have a role in everything that happens in our life. And when you accept that you did have a role in the breakup, it gives you now the ownership of this problem. And when you have ownership of that problem, you can now focus on the solutions so that you don't go through this problem again in your new relationship. And then the last point, the third truth that I went over, is that breakups are tough, even for the person that decides to call it quits. I know that's hard to believe, but if you broke up with someone, I know that it was tough for you. And if you're someone that's been broken up with, I know this may sound crazy, but I want you to have some compassion for the person that did the breaking up, because I know it wasn't easy for them, especially if the relationship was a good relationship that lasted for a long time. So this is Coach Wells. Thank you for checking out this podcast, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button below. All right, I'll see you later.